considerable education, and he was engaged by the colored people to teach their first school. As yet no free schools had been started for colored people in that section. Hence, each family agreed to pay a certain amount per month, with the understanding that the teacher was to board round, that is, spend a day with each family. This was not bad for the teacher, for each family tried to provide the very best on the day the teacher was to be its guest. I recall that I looked forward with an anxious appetite to Teacher's Day at our little cabin. This experience of a whole race beginning to go to school for the first time presents one of the most interesting studies that has ever occurred in connection with the development of any race. Few people who were not right in the midst of the scenes can form any exact idea of the intense desire which the people of my race showed for an education. As I have stated, it was a whole race trying to go to school. Few were too young and none too old to make the attempt to learn. As fast as any kind of teachers could be secured, not only were day schools filled, but night schools as well. The great ambition of the older people was to try to learn to read the Bible before they died. With this end in view, men and women who were 50 or 75 years old would often be found in the night school. Some day schools were formed soon after the freedom, but the principal book studied in the Sunday school was the spelling book. Day school, night school, Sunday school were always crowded, and often many had to be turned away for want of room. The opening of the school in Kanawha Valley, however, brought to me one of the keenest disappointments that I ever experienced. I had been working in the salt furnace for several months, and my stepfather had discovered that I had a financial value, and so, when the school opened, he decided that he could not spare me from my work. This decision seemed to cloud my every ambition. The disappointment was made all the more severe by reason of the fact that my place of work was where I could see the happy children passing to and from school mornings and afternoons. Despite this disappointment, however, I determined that I would learn something anyway. I applied myself with greater eagerness than ever to the mastering of what was in the blue-back speller. My mother sympathized with me in my disappointment, and sought to comfort me in all the ways she could and to help me find a way to learn. After a while, I succeeded in making arrangements with the teacher to give me some lessons at night after the day's work was done. These night lessons were so welcome that I think I learned more at night than the other children did during the day. My own experiences in the night school gave me faith in the night school idea, which, in after years, I had to do both at Hampton and Tuskegee. But my boyish heart was still set upon going to the day school, and I let no opportunity slip to push my case. Finally I won, and was permitted to go to the school in the day for a few months, with the understanding that I was to rise early in the morning and work in the furnace till 9 o'clock, and return immediately after school closed in the afternoon for at least 2 more hours of work. The schoolhouse was some distance from the furnace, and as I had to work till 9 o'clock, and the school opened at 9, I found myself in a difficulty. School would always be begun before I reached it, and sometimes my class had recited. To get around this difficulty I yielded to a temptation for which most people, I suppose, will condemn me, but since it is a fact, I might as well state it. I have great faith in the power and influence of facts. It is seldom that anything is permanently gained by holding back a fact. There was a large clock in a little office in the furnace. This clock, of course, all the 100 or more workmen depended upon to regulate their hours of beginning and ending the day's work. I got the idea that the way for me to reach school on time was to move the clock hands from 8:30 up to the 9 o'clock mark. This I found myself doing morning after morning, till the furnace boss discovered that something was wrong and locked the clock in a case. I did not mean to inconvenience anybody. I simply meant to reach that schoolhouse in time. When, however, I found myself at the school for the first time, I also found myself confronted with two other difficulties. In the first place, I found that all the other children wore hats or caps on their heads, and I had neither hat nor cap. In fact, I do not remember that up to the time of going to school I had ever worn any kind of covering upon my head, nor do I recall that either I or anyone else had even thought anything about the need for covering for my head. But, of course, when I saw how all the other boys were dressed, I began to feel quite uncomfortable. As usual, I put the case before my mother, and she explained to me that she had no money with which to buy a store hat, which was a rather new institution at that time among the members of my race and was considered quite the thing for young or old to own, but that she would find a way to help me out of the difficulty. She accordingly got 2 pieces of homespun jeans and sewed them together, and I was soon the proud possessor of my first cap. The lesson that my mother taught me in this has always remained with me, and I have tried as best I could to teach it to others. I have always felt proud, whenever I think of the incident, that my mother had strength of character enough not to be led into the temptation of seeming to be that which she was not, of trying to impress my schoolmates and others with the fact that she was able to buy me a store hat when she was not. I have always felt proud that she refused to go into debt for that which she did not have the money to pay for. Since that time I have owned many kinds of caps and hats, but never one of which I have felt so proud of as the cap made of the 2 pieces of cloth sewed together by my mother. I have noted the fact, but without satisfaction, I need not add, that several of the boys who began their careers with store hats and who were my schoolmates and used to join in the sport that was made of me because I had only a homespun cap, have ended their careers in the penitentiary, while others are not able now to buy any kind of hat. My second difficulty was with regard to my name, or rather a name. From the time that I could remember anything, I had been called simply Booker. Before going to school it never occurred to me that it was needful or appropriate to have an additional name. When I heard the school roll called, I noticed that all of the boys had at least 2 names, and some of them indulged in what seemed to me to be the extravagance of having 3. I was in deep perplexity because I knew that the teacher would demand of me at least 2 names, and I had only 1. By the time the occasion came for the enrolling of my name, an idea occurred to me which I thought would make me equal to the situation, and so, when the teacher asked me what my full name was, I calmly told him Booker Washington, as if I had been called by that name all my life, and by that name I have since been known. Later in my life I found that my mother had given me the name of Booker Tolliver soon after I was born, but in some way that part of my name seemed to disappear and for a long while was forgotten, but as soon as I found out about it I revived it and made my full name Booker Tolliver Washington. I think there are not many men in our country who have had the privilege of naming themselves in the way that I have. More than once I tried to picture myself in the position of a boy or man with an honored or distinguished ancestry which I could trace back through a period of hundreds of years, and who had not only inherited a name, but fortune and a proud family homestead, and yet I sometimes had the feeling that if I had inherited these, and had been a member of a more popular race, I should have been inclined to yield to the temptation of depending upon my ancestry and my color to do that for me which I should do for myself.